In a quiet Bavarian village, surrounded by dark woods and fog, stood a small chapel. Locals feared it. They said prayers there were never heard. That when you stepped inside, you felt something, watching. Over the years, people went missing. Travelers, children, a priest, all last seen near the chapel. One winter, a young clergyman arrived. He had heard the rumors, and he was not afraid. One night, by candlelight, he pulled up the chapel floor, and there was a hidden hatch. Beneath it, a pit, narrow, deep. He lowered a torch inside. The flame flickered, then revealed bones. Dozens, all bound, limbs twisted, skulls shattered. One still had a rosary in its hand. On the stone wall was a phrase carved in Latin. "He who hears the choir must not descend." That night, the priest heard it, a sound rising from the earth, a soft, horrible harmony, not of voices, but of things pretending to be voices. The villagers woke to screams. By morning, the chapel was burning. Inside, they found his body, his neck broken, his face twisted in a smile, and scratched into the floorboards, over and over. "Now I sing with the choir." It was meant to be a feast, a celebration, but it became a massacre. In 1440, the powerful Douglas clan was invited to dine at Edinburgh Castle. Two boys arrived, William, age 16, and his little brother David, age 10. They were seated beside the king. The food was rich, the wine flowed. Then came the final course, a black bull's head, slain, blood still dripping. It was not a meal, it was a death sentence. The boys were dragged from the table, screaming, begging. They were beheaded in the courtyard. While drums pounded, the king watched, and the black dinner was over. They say the souls of the Douglas brothers never left. Travelers near the castle walls hear drums and soft, quick footsteps. Some say they've seen bloody, child-sized handprints on the stone. Others wake at night to hear knocking, rhythmic, precise. 3 knocks, then silence. If you answer the door, there's no one there. But the stone beneath your feet is damp and red. In the quiet village of Bettiscombe stands a lonely manor. Inside, a skull, resting on a shelf, and it cannot be removed. They say it belonged to a servant, taken from the Caribbean by the Pinney family. As he lay dying, he begged, "Bury me in my homeland, or I will never rest." They ignored him and buried him in the local churchyard. That night, the screaming began. Not outside, inside the house. Doors slammed, walls shook, moans echoed through the halls. Servants fled, horses refused to enter the stables. When the family exhumed the body and brought back the skull, the house grew silent. But each time they tried to get rid of it, the screams returned. Louder, closer, and once, a visitor tried to throw it in the nearby pond. That night, he woke up choking, his throat bleeding, as if someone had tried to rip out his voice. The skull remains in the house to this day. No one dares touch it, and sometimes, late at night, it laughs. In the year 1665, as the plague swept through England like a black tide, a small village, Avon, tried to hold on. They had no walls, no guards, only silence and fear. The sickness came with the baker, a cough, then fever, then death. 2 weeks later, 3/4 of the village lay in shallow graves. No time for prayers, no time for mourning. The local priest, Father Garrett, took desperate action. He sealed the roads, sent letters to nearby towns. Do not enter Avon. Let us die alone. But death did not spare him. Father Garrett began to cough, and as he lay dying, he gave one final order. Bury me by the south wall of the church. Leave the earth above me undisturbed. If you bury another, the ground will rise against you. They obeyed. For a time. But winter came. The ground froze. No one could dig. And when a young girl, barely 5, died in the night, the gravedigger, in desperation, laid her body directly over the priest's grave. That was when it began. At midnight, the wind stopped, and from beneath the earth came a low scraping sound. Nails on wood, groaning, whispers. No rest, no rest, no rest. Villagers heard footsteps on gravel outside their windows. But no one was there. The names of the dead were spoken in voices not of this world. One boy, angry and mocking, threw a stone at the priest's grave. That night he vanished. They found him the next morning, face twisted in terror, his lips torn, as if someone had tried to rip out his scream. And then came the rats. They filled every home, not scurrying, not fleeing, but watching. Men and women swore they saw eyes in the mist, figures in robes, standing at the church ruins, whispering. By spring, the snow melted, and the ground above Father Garrett's grave had collapsed inward, as though something below was trying to climb out. The last survivors burned the church to ash, fled the village, and never returned. But some nights, on the overgrown cemetery hill, when the fog rolls thick over the stones, you might see him, a man in robes, standing by a crumbled wall, his voice barely a breath. I asked only for peace. England, 1666. The plague was everywhere. But one village, Derbyshire, made a cruel choice to survive. It began with one man, a traveling cloth merchant, coughing blood, collapsed at the inn. By the time anyone realized, he had infected half the village. The elders gathered, and they decided no one leaves, no one enters. They sent a message to the next village. We are cursed. Help us from afar or not at all. Supplies were dropped at the stone cross beyond the fields. In exchange, coins soaked in vinegar were left behind. That was the first decision. The second was worse. One morning, a local family, the Crossleys, were found dead, all but the daughter, Eliza, who stood at the door, covered in black boils. She begged, "Please, don't leave me alone." The villagers backed away. That night, they bricked her house shut. From the outside, she screamed, pounded the walls, cried for days, until she stopped. A week later, someone saw her face, pale and starved, staring out through a crack in the shutter. They sealed it tighter. Later that month, another house was boarded up. Then another. No one talked about it. No one protested. It became normal. Seal the sick, save the rest. But then the carpenter's son came down with fever. His father begged the village to spare them, swore it was just a cold. They didn't listen. That night, the carpenter took a hammer to every nail, broke open the boards, and fled with his family. They were found by a patrol in the next town. The entire family was burned in a barn, while still alive, to stop the plague and send a message. By spring, Derbyshire was quiet. The grass grew tall in the streets. No birds sang. Out of 200 people, less than 30 survived. They say there are still houses standing there, with boards on the windows and names scratched into the wood from the inside. Not ghosts, just memories of what fear does to people.